The real MVP is not who the media says, and the numbers make that impossible to ignore. The story you've heard all season points one way, but official league data points somewhere else entirely, to Napheesa Collier. If your entire case is based on highlights and headlines, you'll miss it. But if you follow what actually wins possessions, the shots you take, the shots you don't waste, and the free points you harvest at the line, Collier just finished the most efficient high-load scoring season we've ever seen in the W. This isn't a hot take. It's a receipt-backed reality. Most fans believe MVP should go to the loudest box score, the biggest run, or the brand the algorithm loves. And this year, that drumbeat got deafening. The conversation turned into a tug-of-war between two undeniable greats. But there's a difference between dominance and efficiency, between heat and light. Dominance can overwhelm a game. Efficiency solves it. So here's the contrarian take that flips the debate. When you raise the bar to true MVP responsibility, scoring volume, shot difficulty, turnover control, and team outcomes, Collier's season stands alone. First ever to hit the elite efficiency threshold while carrying a 20-plus scoring load, leading the league in offensive rating among primary options, and doing it without the waste most stars accept as the cost of being a number one. That's not narrative. That's math. Here's the plan. We're going to answer 3 questions the title promises. What exactly did Collier do that no MVP candidate has ever done at the scoring volume? Why do the league's own numbers overturn the media narrative? And how do we prove it play by play, shot by shot, so there's no wiggle room left? Along the way, you'll see the receipts, official shooting splits, offensive rating leadership, and historic thresholds that only exist when efficiency and usage collide. We'll separate fact from hype, show you how voters can get trapped by momentum, and map the money and leverage incentives that explain why this debate got framed the way it did. By the end, you'll know why the most efficient offensive season at MVP volume belongs to Napheesa Collier, and why that should decide the award. Let's start with the line everyone has heard of but still underrates. Did you know how rare it is to join the elite shooting club and keep the throttle wide open on volume? Plenty of players are efficient when they pick their spots. That's not what a number one does. A number one has to be efficient when the defense knows it's coming, when the schedule compresses, and when the counters get scouted. Collier is the first player to clear the gold standard of shooting efficiency while averaging more than 20 points per game. That combination, true 3-level accuracy without sacrificing volume, has never existed at this scale in this league. She didn't gain the thresholds with a light shot diet or a quirky roll. This was nightly, central, and sustained. She scored without bloating the possession count, and she did it with the entire defensive plan aimed at her. The payout is simple. If your best player adds points at elite efficiency instead of trading them for pace and waste, you don't just win more. You raise your team's ceiling in May, June, and September. Now the most shocking part, and this belongs right at the heart of an MVP case. Efficiency isn't one number, it's an ecosystem. It's what your offense becomes when your number one is on the floor. Offensive rating tells that story better than hype ever could. This season, Collier sat at the top of that list among high-usage, primary options. Read that again. Among the players who actually shoulder an MVP's burden, she produced the most points per 100 possessions for her team, and she did it while keeping turnovers in check. The best offense is not just who scores the most, it's who wastes the least. Collier's blend of shot quality, shot selection, and decision-making meant empty trips were scarce and extra points showed up everywhere. On kickouts after hard digs, on slips when the trap came early, and at the stripe when defenders had no clean answers. The payout here is undeniable. When your alpha's possessions are the most valuable possessions in the sport, that alpha is the engine. That's the real MVP job description. So why hasn't this been the consensus? Because momentum and narratives reward fireworks. There's nothing wrong with that. Runs are memorable, and they should be celebrated. But the league's own accounting of value doesn't blink when the timeline gets loud. It measures shot difficulty, premium locations, free throw frequency, and the possession tax of turnovers. Collier taxed the defense, not her team's efficiency. She turned paint touches into clean catch-and-shoot looks, short roll reads into layups for teammates, and late clock bailouts into free throws instead of heaves. That is the quiet arithmetic of victory, and it never chases headlines. It chases trophies. Next question. What threshold separates a nice stat line from a historic one? Think of it this way. Anyone can be efficient at low usage. Anyone can pile counting stats at mediocre efficiency. An MVP season at the apex is where those two lines intersect, true shot accuracy plus a star's workload. Collier's year is the intersection. She combined elite perimeter accuracy with elite free throw reliability and interior finishing that punished switches and deep drops alike. She could live in the mid-post without falling into the mid-range trap because she paired that touch game with two counters, the quick-release corner three and the straight-line drive to force rotation. When opponents sent a late switch to avoid the mismatch, she settled them into jail with her footwork. When they hard showed to take away the downhill lane, she hit the window to shooters instead of dribbling into a turnover. Those micro choices add up to the macro picture. Your offense hums because your star refuses to waste a possession. Let's zoom in on the turnover problem most stars create and Collier avoided. High-usage scorers naturally drift into two kinds of waste: lip ball turnovers that become layups and stalled possessions that die in the mid-range. Collier's risk profile was the cleanest among the club of players asked to carry a team every night. She did not spam low-value pull-ups to pad numbers, and she did not force extra dribbles through a second defender when the first counter was taken away. Instead, she cut the floor diagonally to create a secondary angle, or she pitched early so the ball beat the tag. That's why her team's offense scaled with her. It didn't just survive her. The lesson is obvious. Clean decisions are a scoring skill, and MVPs who protect possessions give you 2 points you see on the scoreboard and 2 you never let your opponent have. Context matters, too. Efficiency is more impressive when the defense is set and the game is tight. Collier's season didn't depend on garbage time inflation or mismatches against the schedule's soft underbelly. She delivered against lineup-locked playoff teams, against long switchers who eat mid-range shooters for breakfast, and in series-style mini-runs where counters get scouted after one meeting. When teams loaded the nail to take away her left shoulder drive, she punished it with a high wing three. When they walled the elbow, she cut backdoor off the slot. When they tried to bait her into contested twos, she flipped the geometry by sealing early and finishing before the help arrived. That evolution, the art of turning the defense's plan into her plan, is why this season reads historic in the data and feels inevitable on film. Another layer that gets lost in the headlines is the synergy effect. True MVP offense makes teammates better without needing the ball to stick. Look at how shooters next to her feasted on rhythm threes. Look at how the short roll game came alive because defenders had to commit two to the ball early. That's not just gravity, the buzzword everyone throws around. That's credibility. Gravity without credibility just tilts the floor. Credibility shifts the scoreboard. Collier built credibility every time she forced the second defender to choose between a foul, a rotation, or a clean jumper elsewhere. That constant stress is why her team's best lineups stay balanced. Fewer wasted touches, fewer rushed shots, and a whistle rate that rewards discipline. Let's talk playbook. Offenses that waste few possessions usually rely on a short list of shots, restricted area finishes, corner threes, and free throws. Collier reorganized her shot diet to live in those zones. She didn't need to be a high-volume bomber to punish space, she just needed to be accurate and decisive. The moment a defender cheated under a pin down, the three went up. The moment a big reached on a spin at the block, the ball went through arms and the whistle followed. Efficiency is not just a percentage. It's a series of if-then statements that eliminate bad bets. Collier reduced the bad bets to the smallest set we've seen from a 20-plus point scorer. That is what most efficient at MVP volume looks like in practice. Now, compare that to the media's favorite measuring sticks. Points per game. Great, but incomplete. Rebounds. Helpful, but not the point of an offensive award. Blocks. A defensive award should care more. Narrative arcs like win streaks. They're memorable, but they're context, not value. When you stack category after category that actually explains how an offense scores, true shooting at volume, offensive rating leadership, turnover avoidance, foul drawing, shot distribution, Collier wins the stack. Every time. If the award is about the player who created the most valuable possessions for their team night after night, the conversation narrows fast. There's a psychological reason this feels counterintuitive. We're drawn to dominance we can see. The high-arching block into the third row, the step-back three when the game is already won, the viral clip from a national TV run. Efficiency hides in possession-by-possession discipline. It looks like nothing until you try to beat it. Coaches know this. Defensive coordinators know this. They would rather defend the spectacular than defend the inevitable. Collier made inevitability her brand this season. That's why the film people and the numbers people finally agree. What about availability? The cleanest MVP cases don't have gaps, and yes, missed games matter. But in a value award, you cannot throw out the magnitude of the value created when available. Collier didn't just nudge her team forward. She set a new market rate for what an on-ball star can deliver per possession without bleeding waste the other way. The team result reflects that. The wins, the seeding, and the profile of their offense all track back to her footprint on shot quality and decision-making. If you trade a few games of absence for a season of unprecedented offensive efficiency at this workload, you still come out ahead in value. That's exactly what happened. Let's build this like a voter who wants to get it right. Start with the non-negotiables. Elite efficiency at elite volume. Collier checks the box in a way no one ever has. Next, ask if the efficiency holds against top competition. It does. Then, ask if the offensive ecosystem improved because of her decisions, not just her makes. It did. Turnovers down, free points secured, and shooters living off clean looks created by her gravity and credibility. Finally, map impact to outcomes. Did it win? Yes. Not by accident. By design. If you're still on the fence, follow one game's timeline. First quarter, the defense shades heavy to the strong side to erase her elbow touch. Skip extra at 3. Second quarter, they try soft doubles to bait a spin. 2 quick fouls and a trip to the line. Third, they switch early to deny the roll. Seal. Entry, drop, finish. Fourth, they bring a third defender at the nail. Swing, corner 3 again. That's 4 different looks, 0 panic, and no wasted possessions. Every counter worked because her base game, footwork, balance, and release is precise enough to punish any compromise. That is what a most efficient MVP season looks like live. There's a media angle worth acknowledging. Awards tilt toward storylines because storylines are how we experience a season. A massive run grabs attention. A superstar's brand makes every night feel familiar. But the incentive system inside a locker room doesn't care about that. It cares about who wins the possession, who turns the scout into points, and who protects the ball. That incentive system chose Collier all year. It chose the player whose shot diet, whistle profile, and decision tree produced the cleanest offense teams couldn't solve. The highlight reel is a souvenir. The arithmetic is the truth. So here's the bottom line. MVP should identify the player whose offensive possessions were the most valuable, the hardest to solve, and the easiest to scale in the postseason. That's exactly what Napheesa Collier delivered. The first to pair elite efficiency with a 20-plus scoring load. The leader in team offense per 100 when she drives the bus. The star who cut waste from her game until all that was left were high-leverage shots and free points. If the award is about value, and not just volume, the case makes itself. If you want one sentence that captures the season, here it is. When Collier touched the ball, your defense had to compromise, and her offense did not. That's not a trend. That's not a narrative. That's the game. And if MVP is about the player who mastered it, then the real MVP isn't who the media says. It's Napheesa Collier,